This is going to be the first in a series of 3 videos dealing with basic stock transfers. Basic stock transfers are Infinity's way to automatically refill either floor samples at stores or back up inventory at the stores. So there's 2 things you're going to need to do to set up basic stock transfers, and that's what this first video is about: is how to set it up so SKUs do qualify to get refilled. So the first thing we're going to do is go to the vendor master or the vendor maintenance screen, and on this screen we'll go choose a vendor here. And there are 4 things you need to have filled out. You probably recognize this screen. This is where you set up the vendor and all the terms and contacts and everything there is to know about that vendor. You also set up how you're going to get suggested purchase orders here for that vendor. And as part of that, there are 4 areas here that, if you can see my cursor here, we're going to have to fill out the days of suggested purchase orders are to be printed or run. And here in this example, there's a yes in every day. These boxes up here correspond to the columns below them, right? So that's one thing that has to be filled out. The next is how many weeks supply uh, you want of the particular SKUs from that vendor. And again, if you're doing it on the suggested purchase order down here, we're not going to do this now. There's other videos for that. You can uh, put in different departments within that vendors, and they can have different week supply, or you can list it by buyers too. You also are going to need to choose the method to calculate the suggested purchase orders or fill quantities. And there's different ways we can calculate that. The majority of vendors or dealers seem to choose the trend sales the last 8 weeks with lead time. So we'll choose that here. Well, actually, it's already chosen up here. If I don't fill any lines below here, then it's going to default to this line here above for the entire department or the entire vendor, I should say. And then the last thing that needs to be filled in uh, is, well, 2 things. One is the lead time um, for that vendor. And so we've got 30 days here. Of course, Infinity, once you're buying from that vendor, will do its own calculations and calculate what the actual is. And then, do you want purchase orders, suggested purchase orders? And we're going to say yes on that. So these are the items right here that need to be filled out so that basic stock transfers will work. So we're going to save that. And then the second piece of that is we now need to go and set up the SKUs that are going to qualify for this. And this is something that typically will be done by your buyers or purchasing department when they are setting up the SKU for the first time. So we're going to go ahead and bring up this SKU here. It's within that vendor we were talking about. And you're familiar with this screen that has all the information, the SKU maintenance screen, about this particular SKU. So to handle the basic stock portion of it is right here where it says basic stock. We're going to click that button. And here is where we fill out what we want to the system to track and fill for basic stock. So the first part is, and you can see this is a dealer that has 3 locations. Each line is 1 location. And that's FL is the floor sample column. There you're going to want to put how many you want to have on the floor sample. You can do it individually by store if they're different, or if you know you want 1 floor sample at each store, you can go down here, put that in, and it will fill it in for you for all stores being the same. Same thing for the available weeks of supply. So remember I said that there's 2 things that basic stock can do. Most furniture vendors are just going to do the floor sample. They don't carry backup stock at branches. But if you carry smaller things, or if you're an electronics dealer, you may want to also have stock um, calculated in your basic stock transfers. And if that's the case, you're going to want to fill this part out here, which is how many weeks supply do you want to keep at each individual store. So, if a store sells 2 a week of a certain product, it's gonna, that's 1 week supply is gonna be 2. So you just need to put the number of weeks in here, or weeks as a fraction. And again, the same thing, you can have different weeks for different locations. Maybe you have a store that sells a lot and is bigger and you want to keep larger um, quantities. You can do that. I'm going to put them the same. I'm going to say I want to keep 1 week supply. Um, and again, it fills all of them the same if that's the case. Here's where you can put in how many you sell per week. And again, this is only necessary when you're setting up the SKU, because obviously Infinity, if it's a new SKU, Infinity doesn't know a sales rate. So if let's say we're going to say that we sell planning on selling 3 per week there at each store, and let's say at this store we're going to sell 2 per week. So Infinity will use that sales rate until it can actually calculate a real sales per week, and then it will take this into account over here, and will not use this number anymore. For the floor samples, what it's going to say is, okay, if you're putting in that you want us to calculate a floor, a transfer to the floor sample, what date do you want it floored? So you just need to put in a date, and it will automatically create that transfer for that date. And I'm going to go ahead down here and I'll choose that same date for all stores. And there we go. If there's a promotion associated with it, you can add a promotion here. And here is kind of an important thing that you can actually put in here what SKU you want removed when this one arrives. So let's say you're sending a new sofa and a love seat over to a store. Well, if the other one hasn't sold yet, you better let the manager know which one he needs to send back if there's not enough room to put an extra one on the floor, right? So you can fill all these out, and the manager will be cued as to what he needs to do to make sure that there's room when these floor samples come across. Okay. Let me just show you down here one more piece of this screen. Down here for the model SKU, remember we talked about week supply or sales rates. If you want to use either one of those, you can actually put a different SKU number here down here. So let's say this SKU is a brand new SKU that we're adding. We don't know the sales rate, but we know it's very similar to another SKU, and we think it's going to sell at the same rate as that SKU. Or you just may choose another SKU that's not similar, but you think it has a similar sales rate. If you fill that in here, and then you put a date right here, it will use the sales rate of that other SKU to calculate the sales rate, what an expected sales rate for this SKU. And you can put it up until a certain date, and that date should be sometime where out in the future where Infinity can actually go out there and calculate its own sales rate, and then it will, after that date, it will use the actual sales rate for the new SKU. Okay, so that is how we set up for basic stock transfers. As I said, this is the first of 3 videos on this. The other 2 will be what the manager portion of this, store managers, which is going to be kind of the part out here where managers, before these things get actually shipped, a manager has to approve that these transfers can take place, so they don't get overwhelmed and surprised by a truckload at the back door and they don't know, they don't have room for it. And then part 3 will actually be looking at the warehouse side of it and the transfer process. All right, so that's video number 1.